Well, good morning folks from Jeff's Little Engine Service. So I had a pretty good haul the other day. Went out to a property that had a bunch of equipment out there and hauled a bunch of stuff home. This was one of them, this Craftsman here. And it looks like it's in pretty good shape overall. The hood, of course, the mounting brackets are broken, just like all of them. But we do have a 20 horsepower opposed cylinder Briggs and Stratton engine, and it looks like it's in pretty good shape. I cleaned this thing up already. Everything looks pretty good. I cleaned it up already, and the deck's not rusted through or anything like that. But I did notice this. Let's see, which side? Yeah. So what we have is a stripped out steering gear, and you can't really get to it without removing the battery plate here. The battery's already been removed, but we're going to have to remove that plate there. It looks like it's these two bolts on each side, and that should give us a little better look at which steering gear is stripped. And I know this lawnmower has sat for several years because of the steering gear problem. So we're probably going to have to rebuild the carburetor as well. We'll keep our fingers crossed that we don't, but anytime something sits for a long time, you usually have to do carburetor work to it. So I'd like to get started right on the engine and put a battery in here, but it's not going to do us any good if the thing doesn't steer. So let's go ahead and do that steering gear first. And we're going to be filming today from the legendary West Side Junkyard. This is a 1/2-inch socket here. So you have this part of the battery tray the battery sits in, but then you also have the metal plate that we need to take off. Get to the steering gears. Two on the other side here. To move some of the cables out of the way. It looks like the positive battery cable actually runs up through it, so I'll have to take that off. Looks like I have to take off this to get it to poke through the hole. I only brought a few tools out here. Hopefully don't have to make another trip back to the shop. Let's see if we can hold on to this thing. Yep. Got to use the tools you got sometimes, folks. Make it work. Make sure not to pull out any wires. Go ahead and pull this positive cable through. Alright. Now we can get down to the steering gear here and see which parts are stripped. So you can see right where it's slipping there. And if you're able to look close, you can see that the teeth, it looks like on this main gear here, are stripped. And I can feel some wear on the steering shaft gear as well. Doesn't look that bad, but it's definitely worn down. So we'll have to replace this whole shaft too. I'm going to go ahead and take off this cover. Got two 3/8 size bolts on each side. And now this gets out of your way. So let's go ahead and take the steering off. And it looks like we have a, what is that, a 9/16 socket. Yep, 9/16 socket. So you have the bolt that comes out, a big washer, the steering wheel pulls right off, and then you have this little plastic adapter that pulls off here. And to remove this, I believe you just pinch it in on each side and it pulls right off. So this is what you end up with here. So I turned the wheels so I could get a little better look at the gears, and they really don't look that bad, but I can definitely see some wear. If you look at it, straight on, you can kind of get a better view of the wear on there. So what you have to do to find parts like that, that's basically part of the lawnmower, not part of the engine. So you want the lawnmower model number, which on a Craftsman, that's where it's located right here. And you can see this model number is 917270940. I think that's what that says. This is your model number. Sometimes you have to have your serial number if there's variations in parts, but usually that model number right there gets you the parts you need. So let's go ahead and look that up. So I was able to find a kit by the model number, and it looks like it's about $70, and basically it's that whole gear assembly already assembled with the shaft attached to it. So we'll wait a few days and hopefully that'll show up and we can finish that up. And from what I can tell, there are 4 mounting bolts in a square pattern that mount this whole bracket in place. So we might be able to get to those bolts without removing the deck here. We'll see. And if I remember right, yeah, so the bolts they use from the factory, I don't know if you can see them here. Let me see if I can find one. So the bolts they use at the factory are self-tapping bolts that mount that plate in place. And if I remember right, we might have to put regular bolts in their place with nuts instead of these self-tappers, because it's too hard to get those suckers to start tapping. So it's easier just to use a nut and a bolt combo. But we'll see. So let me lower the deck here and see if we can get to those bolts. But it's pretty wet out here still, so I think I'm going to let it dry up a bit before I start rolling around on the dirty ground. Alright, I decided it would be a lot easier if we just took the deck off, so let's do that. Alright, so I decided it'll be a lot easier just to take the deck off, so let's do that. This is what I found on the deck, the steering wheel cover. So I've removed all the clips and the cable, pulled out the deck. Now we can get to the bolts, steering box bolts, a little bit easier. So to get this steering box out of here, you basically have to remove the 4 bolts that hold the plate on here, and then you have this arm that goes down below the tractor that attaches to your steering linkage that One bolt down there you have to disconnect to get that off. And if you turn the steering all the way to the left, that bracket pokes down a little bit farther and makes it a little easier to get to under there. All right, let's spray a little bit of lubricant on these bolts before I try and take them off. Make life easy for us, hopefully. All right, I have my phone lighting the way here, and hopefully you can see them. They're right up there. It's pretty hard to film this and do it, so I'm gonna put the camera down for a minute. Oh, all right. And there you go. Hopefully you can see where those are at. They came out real easy. It was a 9/16 socket. And this is what the bolts look like. 4 of them. So now that we have the bolts taken out, we have to disconnect the arm here. It's just one bolt. You need a half inch box end wrench on that side and a 9/16 socket for that side. All right, so I got the nut off and the arm just pulls out. Be careful because there's a lock washer on there. Okay, so here's the steering arm that I just disconnected. And you have a little swivel socket here, so it's a good time to inspect that. And this one's pretty worn out. See how floppy that little socket is there. Yeah. Unfortunately, you can't replace just that. We're going to have to replace this whole arm. Hopefully it's not that expensive. I mean, we don't have to, but we should. All right. So, now what? I think we have to... These always end up broken, by the way. You can see that one's cracked. You can buy a new one, or you can just glue it. It'll work. We got to stop buying parts at some point here, boys. So I'm just gonna repair that, reuse it. But let's take it off for now so we can get the steering out of here. This is a 5/16 socket. Don't want to lose that. I think we have to take this off. I don't think this part comes with the new steering setup. It's a 1/2 inch wrench, 1/2 inch socket. That's money. This piece just comes off. This piece slides off. Gotta remember it goes in that way. So we're all loose. Just have to figure out how to get this thing out of here now. Looks like it comes out pretty easy. Just like that.
That's how it's done, son.
And if y'all are interested, that's what this setup looks like. So the last one I replaced on these holes, as I was saying, they weren't tapped, so you had to have self-tapping bolts. I think what I did was just end up running a bolt through, nut and bolt on each one. Pretty sloppy. Alright, we're still waiting for the new one to arrive. And I suppose I should look into ordering one of these links. So one of the other things that I know I'm going to need to do to this is empty out the gas tank and clean it out to make sure we only have fresh, clean gas in there. Wow, this fuel line really takes a ride here. Goes across the engine. Alright, looks like draining it from this side will be a little better idea. Hopefully. So I don't know if this will work or not, disconnecting it here. The idea is we have to have the end of this line lower than the gas tank for the gas to drain out, so I had to go up here to try and find a longer part of the fuel line. Okay, so this is plastic. This fuel line is very stiff, so you should be very careful at this point not to break the little plastic nub that comes off. Try a little bit of lubricant there. Now this is sketchy, boys. You don't want to break anything here. There we go. Alright, so no gas pours out of there. So we got to figure out how to get this gas out of the tank. Alright. So I did go over to the gas tank here, and we really don't have much gas in there, so I think I'm just going to suck it out with my fluid extractor. Alright, we'll see if my pump's working today. Sometimes it doesn't work. I actually took it off an old hand soap bottle, but it works pretty good sometimes. Alright, let's see here. Yep, we're getting some gas. Perfect. And I don't know if you can see it, but what I'm pulling out of here is pretty cloudy. That means there's probably moisture in here. There's more gas in there than I thought. The pump is working sweet today. Yeah, I think it was an old, oh, you know, the hand soap mechanics get. Takes grease off your hands and such. I think it was on one of those bottles. No, I take that back. This was actually off of a tire slime bottle. The ones that you pump the slime into your lawnmower tires. That's where it came from. An old tire slime bottle. Fix-a-flat bottle. Stop this nonsense and move on to some more nonsense. Alright, let's disconnect the fuel line here. I'm going to blow some air into the tank, blow out the fuel lines, I'm also going to replace this fuel filter. Alright, so I got the fuel filter off, and look, you can see how much crap was in there. It'll be a good idea to drain out the carburetor too, and that bolt there is the drain plug. This is a, what is this? 3/4. 3/4 inch socket. We'll get some gas that comes out, and there should be a gasket on here. And if you look back in there, it's actually your main jet. I don't know if you can see it, but it looks pretty clear from here. I'm going to spray some air in here just to hopefully clean out anything that's in there. It seems pretty clean though. I never get that lucky. It's usually a mess. Not too tight on this. Pretty sure that was the gasket that was still on there. It was an aluminum one. Alright, finally got in the piece here. It had several different part numbers. That was one of them. It was about 70 bucks, $65, something like that. But you can see there's no movement anywhere in these bushings or the gear to gear. It's nice and tight. And then here's our new steering link. You can see the little ball pivots here are in good shape. Looks like I still need to disconnect it from the front, so I'll do that. So we put the old 1/2 inch on top here. I have my 9/16 socket here. So you have a nut and lock washer here. Don't lose it. And then this just lifts out. Go ahead and put the new one back in here. As you can see, these linkages are pretty easy to change. It's always nice when the job is easy. Not very often does that happen. So these are the self-tapping screws that they installed the original one with. It's a real pain in the butt to try to get these to thread again with this new piece, because as you can see, it's not threaded. So I don't know, maybe we can try starting the threads first before we mount it up. I think that's what I'll try and do. That way I can reuse these. And if you look close, you see that little imperfection it looks like right there? That's not an imperfection. That's the part of this bolt that, or the screw if you want to call it that, it actually cuts the metal as it's twisting in. Self-tapping. So I'm going to go ahead and tap these into this first, see if that works, because it's too hard to try and tap them once. It's too hard to try and tap them and install it at the same time, so yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And normally you can only use these once before they get dull and don't cut like they're supposed to. But we'll see how they do. Alright, let's see if this works. Yeah, it does. Right on. It's a lot easier to do with one of these drills, that's for sure. Yeah, this was the way to do it for sure. That's the way to do it. Now we have threads. We put this through. Just like that. All right, good and tight. And this goes back in place. Oops. Which way? There we go. Like that. I think these were the bolts. And no, I'm not going to replace that piece. It'll be fine. And put this little piece back on. Now it's this thing, right? Yeah. So before I put the steering wheel on, I want to make sure the gears here are approximately in the middle section. And I'll put the steering wheel on straight. And if it's not in the straight position, you can just pop out this little piece, put it on like this, get the steering wheel straight. You also want to make sure that your wheels are in the straight position at this point. Looks pretty good. That's pretty close to straight, at least as straight as it's going to get. I won't use that drill to tighten this down because it'll strip it out. Ah, there we go. Put our little cap back on here. Go. And now all we have to do is hook up this steering linkage, and then we could start testing out this engine. So when I hooked up the linkage and the steering wheel is straight, the wheels are still crooked, not a big deal. I'm just going to take off this steering wheel and straighten it. Alright folks, we have steering action. Let's go ahead and put the battery back in this thing. Our battery tray in place. There we are. Now we're ready for a battery. And you just cinch these down, and that holds the battery in place. Just about like that. You know, they always say to hook up the positive first, but I don't listen to what they always say. Alright, I've already filled it up with gas, but since we emptied out the carburetor, it's going to have to turn over for a while for the fuel pump to fill up the carburetor again. And we can watch the fuel filter here, and hopefully we'll see fuel flowing after I turn it over a bit. Alright, here we go. Yep, there's our gas. Perfect. So the carburetor is filling up with gas right now, hopefully. Yeah, man. Only needed the choke for a second. Gotta get a bolt for this still. I just want to make sure that I checked the oil in this thing. I think I did. Yeah, there's oil in there. Looks like it needs to be changed. Alright, we'll fire it up again, let it warm up, then we'll rev it up. That's good. Well, I'm going to put this mower back together, and it's going to be a pretty good lawnmower for somebody. Thanks for watching, folks.